Everyone, Vonlin here, and I am very excited today to be bringing you my first video from Total War Warhammer, which is my most anticipated game from 2016. I've been waiting a very long time to play this game. I'm so excited about it. I'm excited to start making videos in this game. This is my first one that I want to share with everyone, and it's me playing as the Vampire Counts, specifically as Manfred von Karstein against a siege against a human city of the Empire. Well, not the Empire faction, but one of the Empire sub-factions. Um, I'm really excited about Warhammer. Like I said, I think I've been waiting so long for a fantasy Total War game like this. And without any further ado, let's jump into and show you what my army is like. Um, right here, you can see my legendary lord or my general who's leading the battle, Manfred van Karstein. He's one of two character choices you get when playing as the Vampire Counts. This is a campaign game, a game from my first campaign. Playing as the Vampire Counts. I'm about 80 turns into the game. Manfred here is, I think, level 18 or so. As you can see, he's got his tier 2 mount, the Hellsteed. He starts off, just walking on the ground as a foot soldier, and at like a level 7 or 9 or so, you can get an undead horse similar to what my cavalry have back here that he rides. And then later on, recently, he just got this flying Hellsteed winged war horse, that he can use as a mount. And eventually, he gets a zombie dragon at level 25, but I'm not quite that far yet. Like I said, I'm 80 turns into the game. This is my main campaign army, so all of them have 2 silver chevrons of experience, or 1 silver chevron. Some of my newer units, like these Crypt Horrors, only have 3 bronze chevrons worth of experience. But my army is very experienced veterans, pretty high upper tier units. It's not all the end tier units. I'm definitely missing some of the top tier units. From the Vampire Counts, but I definitely have a lot of the elite and the better units. As you can see here, I'm using Grave Guards instead of skeletons or zombies, which are your starting inventory. These are the upgraded, better infantry that Vampire Counts get to have. I have 6 units of normal Grave Guard here with shield and sword, and I have 2 more units of Grave Guard with great weapons back here, which basically is just this really giant sword, and so they don't have a shield, so they're a little bit less armored, but they have armor piercing, and they do a little bit more damage because they have this giant sword. So I have 8 units of Grave Guard in total. Like I said, my legendary lord Manfred leading the army from a Hellsteed. His skill points have been specced out in death magic, so I use him as a caster. He's also got some points in melee and some just general command points that help him like regenerate casualties for his armies and reduce attrition. But mainly I have him as a spell caster, and also have upgraded his melee attack quite a bit. So he can join the fray, and he's quite effective in close combat, but he also has some very powerful death magic spells he can cast. Up here in the front, I have my Vargholf, which I don't have the technology in the game. I haven't built the buildings to build these, but when you start as Manfred, you actually get one of these in your starting army, and he's so strong and powerful. I really, love using him, and I keep him close to Manfred and keep him alive. And like you can see, he's got 2 silver chevrons because I've been using him in every battle, and he gets tons and tons of kills. Probably my favorite unit of my army, and as you can see, I have him in the front of my army. Behind him, I have 2 units of Crypt Horrors, which are a more recent unit that I just unlocked to being able to produce, like just before this battle, actually. I probably used them in 1 or 2 battles before this, which these are very heavy infantry shock. Their tag here is monstrous infantry, where you can see up here this guy's monster. So these are really big units. Overall, my army is about 1,000 men. But because these units are only like 9 and this guy's only 1, and you'll see some other flying monsters units I have back there, the number's a little deceiving. The opponent here has 1,800 soldiers, but they're all human foot soldiers, and they're not quite as experienced veteran as mine. Some of them have like double bronze chevron worths of experience. Like I think some of these guys somewhere do, but most of them, as you can see, don't have any experience. So I certainly have a veteran army of good units I'm bringing against this siege against the Empire faction. Anyway, sorry to continue with my army. I got a little distracted. Besides the Grave Guards and the monstrous units I have up front, I also have my cavalry, which is not super useful in sieges or this siege, but like I said, this is my main campaign army, and I really like using cavalry. So you can see I have quite a few cavalry units. I have 2 units of Black Knight Lancers, which are, good at charging, as you can guess with these lances. They have very high charge impact. And then I have 4 units of just normal Black Knights with shields and sword. So they're a little bit better at, prolonged fighting and melee. But I have these guys for the shock power of their charges. And last but not least, probably my favorite units by far I have these beautiful, beautiful um, Vargheiss, which are basically like these primal forms of vampires and their baser form of just being monstrous flying combatants. You know, where Manfred, you know, still has not his humanity, but his intelligence and cunning and is a higher form. You know, these guys are just the brutal version of what a vampire is if you read about their lore in the game, and they're a very powerful, monstrous flying unit that I've really been using to great success, as you'll see in this battle. Um, this is a siege battle, and I built this battering ram, but I'm not going to use it. I'm actually trying an alternative strategy where I'm just going to batter down the gate with this guy up here in front, my little pet. I call him Manfred's pet. But I'm going to actually use these guys, him and the Crypt Horse, to batter down the gate. I didn't build any siege towers. Siege towers for the vampire counts are really good. Let's get this started. But I wanted to try doing this without siege equipment. So I just built a battering ram so they let me begin the siege, but this is actually my first attempt ever at taking a city without using it. So as you can see right away, I'm going to start off the battle by sending forward my my Vargholf and my Crypt Horse to kind of draw fire from the enemy towers, because they're heavily armored, have lots of HP, and this guy even has regeneration, so I don't care too much if they draw off some fire. And then I'll bring up the rest of my army behind them, as you can see here, with Manfred flying above them on his steed, which I really love. This is the first Total War game with flying units, and so far I gotta say I love it. So as you can see, this guy's extremely fast. That's another thing I love about him. He can chase down units very well and be exactly where you need him to be in the battlefield, even though he's not a flyer. So I have him run. He ran up to the gate right away, and he just started beating on it, which, as you can see, he's already done 21% of the gate's damage. So who needs battering rams when you have a Vargholf? Like I said, very useful unit. When you start out as the vampire counts, do not lose this guy in a battle. He is great. Manfred's going to fly up here, and in a little bit I'm going to start using some of his death spells I mentioned here. You're going to see him casting one of them right here on these unit of swordsmen. I used his spell that's best against multiple combatants. It's very powerful. You can see it's just going to start doing a ton of damage to these swordsmen here on the wall while I wait for the gate to be battered down. You see their health just depleting over time. Lord characters, which is like your General or Manfred, are very powerful in this game, I've noticed, which, I don't know, some people might complain they're overbalanced, but I think it's just a lot of fun, and it's really fun having these characters they're actually using on the battlefield. So you can see the spell's ended, and I've killed 3/4 of one unit of swordsmen with him. You know, he does have limited magic capacity. You can see in the bottom right here, it starts at 30. I've depleted it down to 25, and the more I cast it, the slower it regens. So you only can cast so many spells in a battle. You have to be careful with it. So we've gone ahead and we've knocked down the gates here, and we're going to send in my shock troopers here with that awesome, beautiful jump animation attack, as I just kind of break through the crowd of defenders, and they pile in more guys to try to plug the hole that I'm going to make. I really liked this part of the battle. It's one of the reasons I wanted to use this video, because it reminds me of, in Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, the Siege of Minas Tirith, when the cave trolls come running through and the gates. I really reminisced of that. So anyways, up here on the wall, I've brought in Manfred, and I've also brought in my Vargheist to land on the walls, actually, and just start tearing apart units. I've also cast, you see all these purple effects across a whole bunch of enemy units? That is a different spell that I cast with Manfred that actually reduces the fighting effectiveness of enemies in a large AoE area. It reduces their armor and the damage and their leadership, which is Warhammer morale. It makes them more likely to rout. So I basically charge the walls with Manfred and all of my flying back guys, and then I decrease the fighting effectiveness while my infantry down here are pouring in behind my monstrous units now to start fighting the defenders and kind of force our way into the city. As you see me cast that same AoE spell again there. See, all this purple is me debuffing and hexing the entire enemy army and making them less effective in combat. You can see their leadership bars here, this white bar greatly depleted by it, and they also are doing less damage for about 15 seconds or so. So I'm just kind of clearing my way through the wall. Like I said, these are my favorite units. You can see why they've made very short work of these units on top. You know, disclaimer again, these Vargheists do have 2 chevrons of silver experience, and they're a mid to late game unit, whereas they're just fighting swordsmen here with much less experience. But very fun units. As Manfred, you can see, is Manfred, excuse me, is continuing to cast more spells, debuffing the enemy army. making it easier for my main ground force to kind of cut their way through and make way for the cavalry to eventually charge in, who it has came up to the front here. You actually see one of my cavalry units here is my Black Knights is almost dead. That's because I left them sitting out here in tower range, and they just kept getting shot by the towers over and over and over again, which I probably should have had them further back or brought them in sooner, but like I said, cavalry is not really super useful, although I will be able to use them to chase some archers down here in a second. As my units continue to just fight in this massive melee right besides the gate. You know, and again, I could have used siege towers and attacked multiple points along the walls here, but now that I have these flying units, I kind of use them to just come in with Manfred as well, by the way. Manfred is also fighting up here on the walls, just cutting through units with AoE attacks as he swings his sword. I'm kind of hard to see him here behind these big bat guys, but they're making very short work of the guys on the wall here. We can get a tactical overview. You can see the enemy has some defenders scattered throughout the city and reserves back at the town center, but I'm just putting I'm throwing my entire army at one point. All the power I have. I'm not spreading them out. I'm not trying to attack multiple points. You see this white particle circular effect that just surrounded all my guys? That is one of Manfred's abilities as a vampire. That's called Bloodlust, and it gives all my units 18% armor piercing for like 20 seconds or so. Or 20, excuse me, I think it's 20% armor piercing for 18 seconds. So basically you bust the damage of all my guys against armored units. You can see here we've really kind of scattered the defenders. Manfred is actually flying off the wall and going to come join into the fight down here now. And get his hands dirty, just flies right in the middle of a bunch of human units. He doesn't care whatsoever. He's not afraid to get into the middle of it. He's, like I said, he's extremely powerful. You can see he's taking barely any damage at this point. Meanwhile, I've sent my cavalry around the side here to harass the enemy ranged units, their archers, and kind of scare them off the field and pursue them all the way to the town center. My Black Knights are making quite short work of these crossbowmen here, as you would expect cavalry to do against ranged units. You know, the kind of the classic rock, paper, scissors scenario. But the enemy is bringing around some spearmen that have seen better days to try to stop the the cavalry, excuse me. Which spearmen are obviously very good against cavalry, so I will get bottled down eventually by them. But the main force of infantry is just pushing forward with the crypt horrors at the lead, just batting their way through the enemy army and letting the grave guards clean up. Meanwhile, I've sent the bats further ahead to kind of hit the enemy behind the main battle and start softening them up. And to be honest, I kind of forget about some of these bats back here, or these Varkai, excuse me, and they're fighting spearmen, which have bonus against monstrous creatures, or large creatures, and they do very well against them. You can see my bats are actually taking a lot of damage and are quickly losing their health. So as powerful as these guys are against those swordsmen, there is counters to them. Spearmen do very well against them. I'm going to have to pull these guys out soon before I lose them completely. While my infantry kind of cleans up the rest of the enemy that is in the inner courtyard here. My beautiful, beautiful Varkalf is looking for more things to kill. He's killed everything around him and routed him. He's chasing down, trying to get more kills. And the crypt horrors bring up the middle here. And actually, pretty soon, I believe, yes, Manfred here is making the final push himself to the center of the city, the capture point. I've spotted the enemy lord, and I've sent Manfred straight for him to challenge and call him out in combat. And at first I'm like, oh, he's not having it. He's running away, as he should be, from the mighty Manfred. As you can see here, just knocking down multiple guys. I love Manfred. It's so much fun. But no! The enemy lord comes charging in, hits Manfred in the back, and actually does the first amount of damage Manfred's taken. And to be honest, I think this guy could have held his own if it wasn't for the crypt horrors coming to their lord's rescue and just dogpiling in on this guy. They're not having any of it, and you can see they do a lot of damage very quickly to him. You know, they're not going to leave their Lord Manfred alone. Manfred here just cast a single target ability, Spirit Leech, which is extremely effective against a single target. Against a unit of multiple units, like a unit of swordsmen, it's not good. But you can see it just eats away at the health of Wolfram here and kills the enemy Lord. So you can tell it's looking pretty grim for these humans at this point. They're making their last stand against my Grave Guard who came to capture the city center. But there's not much that they can do at this point without their lord. The Cryptors are celebrating. They took minimal damage. Manfred surveys the battle, and it's pretty much over at this point. Like I said, it was about 1,000 of my guys versus 1,800 or so of the enemy humans. You know, not the most balanced battle because, you know, I admit I'm using a lot of high-end units and I'm using them with, you know, lots of veteran units against inexperienced units. But, you know, I didn't design this to be that way. Like I said, it's just a game for my campaign that I really had fun and thought would be a good video for my first video to get up on YouTube from Warhammer. Please subscribe to my channel because I'm going to be making a ton more Total War Warhammer videos, I promise you. I can tell I'm going to be spending a lot of time playing this game, and I look forward to more videos. So stick around my channel and look for more of them. Here you can see the statistics on what I brought. Like I said, about 1,000 guys. I only lost 200 against 1,800 defenders. You can see the experience levels of my army versus the opponents here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please stick around my channel and look for more Total War, and I'll see you guys next time.